Last week, I made some very strong comments. They were kind of in passing, but they were strong nonetheless. So, for instance, I said, Yeshua died on a Friday and rose on a Sunday. And then I proclaimed boldly that this is actually in the text. And Rob even said, well, what about people who believe that, Yeshua died on a Tuesday or Wednesday? I said, well, people are entitled to be wrong. But the text says that it was a Friday. Now, of course, people have asked this question. You say that Christ died on a Friday, rose on a Sunday. How can you say this according to the text? Okay. This is a really easy answer because we'll use 4 pieces of scripture to prove this, and 3 of them are basically the same thing reiterated within the Synoptic Gospels. If you don't know what the Synoptic Gospels are Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And then, of course, John is quite different. A lot of people and a lot of scholars for many, 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 many years, almost, I would say 1900 years, believed strongly that John and the Synoptics contradicted each other. The reason why, and we've talked about this on this show before, is because it seems as though John contradicts the Synoptics. It seems as though John has Yeshua dying on Nisan 14 when the lambs are slaughtered, whereas Matthew, Mark, and Luke clearly have him dying on the 15th of Nisan. So the Last Supper, according to the Synoptic Gospels, is a Passover meal, whereas it seems, I'm going to keep using this word seems, that John places
air quotes,
places this meal on Nisan 13, making it not a Passover meal, but a love feast. Now, I've written extensively on this, although I have not released my work on it yet. Okay, with all that said.
And your dad's written on it. We interviewed Brant Petrie, who wrote a whole book on the that addresses this.
Right.
That's not the whole content of the book, but he does challenge. And he rehearses basically what your dad had written in a online article, 10 or 20 years ago.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing is that, scholarship today, those who have actually started to look into this have realized, no, the Synoptics and John line up perfectly. It's understanding the language that John is using.
Exactly.
And this is one of my go-to passages now. When people say, "Oh, well, this is a contradictory. Look at this or look at this. It's a contradictory in the Bible." And my answer is, well, for almost 1900 years, scholars believed that John and the Synoptic Gospels contradicted each other. It took them 1900 years to figure out, no, they don't contradict each other. They're perfectly in alignment. Okay, so why do I say that Yeshua died on a Friday? And this can be proven from the text. Well, for those who listen to this show, I hope and I pray that you believe that the scriptures the 66 book scriptures are inspired and that they do not contradict each other. Okay, so if they do not contradict each other, and these are, this is the question that I would ask to people who say that Yeshua did not die on the 15th of Nisan. Now, we need to establish this before we get into some other questions, because we got questions about the sign of Jonah. We got questions about proving this, that, and the other. So let's establish first that Yeshua died on a Friday. Okay. Let's go to the text. Matthew 26:17 says, "Now on the first day of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Yeshua and asked, 'Where do you want us to prepare for you to eat the Passover?'" Okay. Now, you might be able to say, okay, well, that doesn't necessarily mean one way or the other. Okay. Now, let's go to the reaffirming of this same thing in Mark and Luke. In Mark 14:12, it says, "On the first day of unleavened bread, when they were sacrificing the Passover lambs, his disciples said to him, 'Where do you want us to go and prepare for you to eat the Pascha?'" What is the Pascha? It's not the ceremonial meal. It's the Passover lamb. And we know this because in Exodus, it talks about the Pascha, which is the lamb. So Mark has already affirmed that what Matthew is talking about when he says the first day of unleavened bread, what he's talking about is Nisan 14, because Nisan 14 is the only time that the only day when the lambs could be sacrificed. So we know that this is Nisan 14. Otherwise, the temple would not be sacrificing the lambs. Okay, let's go to Luke. Luke 22:7 says, "Then came the day of unleavened bread, on which the Passover lamb," now they supply lamb there. Now, I'll give you all that. But it says, came the day of unleavened bread, on which the Pascha had to be sacrificed. What day is that? Well, we know what day that is, because the only day that the Pascha could be sacrificed, Nisan 14. Okay, now, what happens in the Synoptic Gospels? Everybody should know this. Well, Yeshua is arrested after the meal in the garden. Okay, he goes to the Jewish authorities' home. They keep him overnight. In the morning time, they take him to the praetorium and they bring him to Pilate, right? Pilate then sends him to Herod. Herod sends him back to Pilate same day, and then he is crucified on the next day, which, according to the Synoptic Gospels, would be Nisan 15. Okay, so now let's go to John. Now, this is where we know, this is how we know that he was crucified on a Friday. John 19:31, "Then the Jews, because it was the day of preparation, so that the bodies would not remain on the cross on the Sabbath." Well, there's two main things that's going on here. First of all, if Matthew, Mark, and Luke are not contradictory to John, then you have 2 days of preparation in a row. You have the day of preparation, which is Nisan 14 for the Passover, and then the next day is a day of preparation. When is the only time that this happens? The only time that you have 2 days of preparation in a row is when Nisan 14 is on a Thursday and Nisan 15 is on a Friday. That's the only time. You have no other time when you have 2 preparation days in a row. So this right here tells us, these 4 verses right here tell us that he is crucified on a Friday. Beyond that, and this is something that a lot of people miss in the English, the day of preparation is never, ever used in any literature that we have of the first century, ever used for Nisan 14. Friday is called the day of preparation.
Right.
So John uses it would be like us saying, and because it was Friday, so that the bodies would not remain on the cross on the Sabbath. Now, people are going to say, oh, no. The day of preparation could be Nisan 14. Prove it. Show me anywhere in any first century literature. And once again, why don't the Synoptic Gospels use this? They say it was the day of unleavened bread, the day when the Pascha was sacrificed. They don't say it was the day of preparation. Why? Because it wasn't Friday. The day of preparation is only used for Friday. John uses the name of Friday in the first century for that day. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking the subscribe button and check out more videos from Messiah Matters.